Yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna start recording. Just gonna start talking about it. So I've been on a recording hot streak today. I don't know in what order a lot of these videos are gonna come out in, but I have to seize the opportunity while I have it. Before we get into anything, please consult the guidance that I am presently highlighting so as to boost this video and my channel's overall performance in the YouTube algorithm. But also consider checking out my merchandise store, Mount Merch, for any of the merch that I have developed for the channel. But that aside, today I wish to discuss something very specific in regards to the Godzilla franchise, in regards to one of its less popularly explored subtopics, which is the human character. I wish to discuss in as much detail as I can reasonably get away with in a YouTube video that I do not want to spend literal days on days editing in the editing room. The human characters from the Nintendo Wii and PlayStation 2 iterations of Godzilla Unleashed. The climax finale last entry of the Golden Trilogy of Atari-Pipeworks three-dimensional Godzilla fighting game. There is an element in particular regards to the scrapped story of the second entry, Godzilla Save the Earth, that I do plan on / hope to cover in the future. But for the moment, I'm mostly just interested in saying what little I can about what's interesting to note about some of the human characters within Godzilla Unleashed's minimal story. For context though, I am going to be leaving out one particular character in specific, but I will explain that as it comes. I think in general it's worth noting that Godzilla Unleashed story was near universally reviled for, pretty good reason. I won't go into that with any specificity, but as a consequence of that, the human cast was also mostly unremarkable. The only character that I really don't want to cover in this video, because I feel like it deserves its own kind of comparison, is the character of Dr. Shiragami. It should be noted that the Dr. Shiragami that is seen in Godzilla Unleashed may have the surname Shiragami, but he doesn't really share anything else with the character from Godzilla vs. Violante, Genichiro Shiragami. I really don't think the actor, at least based on the picture here on Wikizilla, I don't think he really looks like the Shiragami that's in the Godzilla Unleashed game. But aside from his relevance to another character that I will cover, he's not really worth going over in this video specifically because I feel like that kind of warrants a Dr. Shiragami specific video to explain. The first character that I will cover is Base Commander Tagaki. The reason I used air quotes when I said cover him is because there's not really a whole lot to him. When a character doesn't even have a Wikizilla.com article, you really can't say a whole lot about him. Even me and anyone who has watched any of the many videos on this channel, including many of the ones about human characters in Godzilla media, knows that I can actually squeeze a decent amount of time out of most of these characters, however minor they are, but he's definitely the least interesting one from the Godzilla Unleashed character cast. So much so that he doesn't even get a first name. Base Commander Tagaki, that's it. That's all we're getting. And it's kind of disappointing because his military commands and his general candor and demeanor could have communicated more of a depth of character, but he just is the military commander guy. He's literally the most generic military commander guy you can possibly think of. It's serviceable for the story, but there isn't really anything there. The most interesting thing about Base Commander Tagaki is that he interfaces with the Council of the Global Defense Force, which I would probably most closely compare to the World Council or whatever it's called from the MCU that Nick Fury interfaces with.
I recognize the council has made a decision, but given that it's a stupid-ass decision, I've elected to ignore it.
The only other thing that you can really say about Base Commander Tagaki is that he has some sort of relationship, and I just mean he talks to and communicates with the next character that I wish to cover, and the character that, in truth, pretty much motivated me to make this video in the first place, which is Specialist Kenji Miku. So, in addition to Operator Naomi from Godzilla for PS4 and Operator Yui from Godzilla Defense Force. This brings us up to, in total, 3 operator specialist girls, and Kenji Miku is the only Western-created member of that triumvirate.
Most triumphant third of the triumvirate.
There's not really a whole lot that can be said for her personality and character, much like everybody else in this video. She's hopelessly optimistic, and she has total and complete faith in the ability of the Earth Defenders and the positive Earthborn kaiju to kind of solve the conundrum and put an end to the Crystal Incursion as it takes place in the PlayStation 2 and Wii versions of Godzilla Unleashed. She pretty much just exists to tell the player, like,
oh, you're about to go to this level and do this thing.
She ain't got much going on. But that said, the reason I felt compelled to make a video about Kenji Miku at all is that I did some research. So, her name is Kenji Miku. This name is odd because if you read the order of her name in a Western sensibilities way, that would make her first name Kenji and her last name Miku. Based on what little research I did through Google, Kenji is a boy's name. More specifically, it is noted as being a boy's name and a first name, not a surname / last name. The only way that Kenji Miku's name makes sense is if you read it in the kind of Japanese sort of sensibility where the surname comes first and the first name comes second, in which case you could westernize it to be Miku Kenji. But it's odd because I believe Base Commander Tagaki, or perhaps one of the members of the Council of the GDF, I can't remember exactly which it is, refers to Miku as Miku, which would imply in a kind of professional military setting that her last name is Miku, because why would you call her Miku, her first name, if you're at work in the military and she's just one of the many computer operators, so you just refer to her by her last name. So that would imply that Miku is in fact her last name. So, needless to say, a girl, a grown woman actually, with the first name Kenji does not really make any sense then. It is worth noting, and if you are non-American, this would probably be good context for you to have, most video game development and most associated companies with that are located on the west coast of the United States of America, and as an American I can tell you the west coast of the United States of America has a particularly common breed of political persuasion and ideological persuasion.
What kind of place is this?
San Francisco and Los Angeles are on the West Coast, so if you don't know anything about American politics, just know that those two cities in specific are not universally necessarily indicative of the political persuasions of people on the West Coast of the United States, but a lot of the tech companies and video game development firms kind of all follow similar ideological persuasions, if you kind of catch my drift. Therefore, I do consider it possible that Kenji was picked as Operator Miku's first name in order to buck gender trends and to give a rather feminine character a masculine name, I guess as a sort of rebellion or bucking of the system or trends. I only bring this up as a possibility because developers that worked on Godzilla Unleashed and the preceding Golden Trilogy of the Atari-Pipeworks Godzilla Trilogy tried to emphasize, I believe unnecessarily, the importance of gender diversity in the failed follow-up project that succeeded Godzilla Unleashed, Colossal Kaiju Combat. So even though I would like to run with the next theory that I'm going to give, which is markedly simpler, I cannot necessarily shake the feeling that there was something deeper to the decision to begin with. But the obvious alternative is simply that Kenji Miku's name was just picked because it was markedly admittedly Japanese and it sounded cool. If I'm being as charitable as I can be, I'm just gonna go with that as the explanation because, as I explained, otherwise it doesn't really make any sense. I don't know who was credited with coming up with any of the characters for Godzilla Unleashed, the original ones, so I'm not gonna lay blame at any name, but it's odd and it leaves me with questions. Before I go on to the last character that I think I'm going to probably talk the most about, aside from Kenji Miku, I would like to petition a particular artist that I include artwork from on this channel in very quick flashes every now and then. I would like to request that the artist known as Kaijin Man take some time out of their presumably busy schedule to draw artwork of Specialist Kenji Miku. My reasoning is selfish to an extent, admittedly. If we assume that Kenji is actually her first name, whether it was done for this or that culture war reason is kind of irrelevant. It is a boy's name, typically. Why they decided to name a girl that, I don't know, but we can kind of extrapolate and come up with some interesting details for this character, much like we did for Operator Naomi, who previously did not have a name aside from G-Force Operator from Godzilla for PlayStation 4. And if you know anything about the kind of artwork that Kaijin Man tends to draw, not all of which is safe for work, you might know where I'm going with this. Between Operator Yui and Operator Naomi, we have two distinctly feminine characters, at least according to how I have discussed them in the past on this YouTube channel. I would therefore like to propose
I come to make an announcement
that Specialist Kenji Miku be interpreted by the fan base for Godzilla in general as a tomboy. Like I said, masculine first name, typically. But she's definitely a woman. She's also not particularly top-heavy based on the artwork that she is depicted through in the Godzilla Unleashed animated cutscenes. Therefore, I'm inclined to propose that Kenji Miku should be drawn with feminine abdominal muscles. Kaijin Man has done an excellent job of drawing several female characters with such. That was why I particularly mentioned that name. I should be including a link to that artist's Twitter account in the description for this video, but be made aware that Kaijin Man does not draw entirely safe for work artwork, and technically Twitter/X is an adult platform, only allowed for adults. So, yeah, I don't really think I need to explain exactly what that means, but Kaijin Man's art is amazing, and I generally think that many of the lesser known and less important human Godzilla side characters deserve to be drawn in pristine artwork such as the kind that Kaijin Man supplies. And last but not least, I do wish to cover General Gyozen. Is that his full name? Yeah, no, General Gyozen, who does, in fact, actually have a Wikizilla article. Not a super duper extensive one, but considering General Gyozen technically takes the form of a boss fight in Godzilla Unleashed, as he is the commander of the Astragon, also known as the Gotengo in Godzilla Final Wars. General Gyozen has 10 plus years of experience with commanding the Astragon. I believe the Wikizilla article refers to him as semi-retired. He's unnecessarily aggressive in my opinion. It really did seem like they were trying to mimic Captain Douglas Gordon, one of the best characters in the Godzilla franchise from Godzilla Final Wars, through General Gyozen, but he has aggressive tendencies and he employs Dr. Shiragami, whom I mentioned earlier in the video, to research fragments of one of the many crystals that has sprung up on the Earth as a result of the plot of Godzilla Unleashed. Now, in the Wii version, that indirectly leads to the creation of Violante, but I can't remember exactly what the actual effect it has in the PlayStation 2 iteration of Godzilla Unleashed is. I think it just drives a monster wild and makes it extra large, I think.
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large, a number 6 with extra dip, a number 7, 2 number 45s, 1 with cheese, and a large soap.
that's really all there is to General Gyozen within the main two console versions of Godzilla Unleashed. You'll be interested to know, if you didn't already know, that General Gyozen is, aside from the player, whatever you would define them as within Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash, the main character, I guess, of Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash on the Nintendo DS. For all intents and purposes, he basically just replaces Base Commander Tagaki wholesale, including the generic military give orders kind of demeanor. He also does not showcase any turn to the dark side, succumbing to aggression story arc like he does to an admittedly limited extent in the console versions of Godzilla Unleashed. And that is because in the Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash game, General Gyozen has this weird story arc where he has a son.
He's your son?
I have a son?
And the son goes to the Academy, which has some relationship to / with the Global Defense Force within Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash. It should go without saying, but Gyozen is never said to have a son in the console versions of Godzilla Unleashed. It is only in Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash that the existence of General Gyozen's son is mentioned / shown at all. And you might think, reasonably so, that these two pictures don't really mesh very well. And I would say that the art style of Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash definitely depicts General Gyozen a little bit more cuddly, is the only word I can think to describe it. But overall, because of the lack of the succumbing to the energies of the Crystal Matrix subplot in Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash and the inclusion of General Gyozen's unnamed son, it kind of softens the general image of General Gyozen. General Gyozen's son is roughly 10 years old, maybe 11 or 12 tops, if you really want to stretch it. I believe, though I'm not citing any sources for this is just entirely my own machination, I think General Gyozen's son is meant to be kind of relatable to what I would assume the publishers thought would be the target demographic of Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash, as it was, of course, released on the Nintendo DS. Otherwise, General Gyozen's son is not so much as named. I mean, he's clearly a he, and he's resourceful to some extent because he sends out an SOS signal to the Global Defense Force when the crystals kind of uproot in the Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash iteration of San Francisco, which is swallowed in volcanic ash and lava and volcanic debris, kind of like how Seattle is in the console versions of Godzilla Unleashed. To me, this is the detail about General Gyozen that kind of justifies his existence, because I would like to see Captain Douglas Gordon from Godzilla Final Wars exist in the same universe as General Gyozen here. Pay no attention to the fact that I pointed to the opposite side of the screen, because Captain Gordon doesn't have a son, but he does have a sort of grudge / history with Godzilla, whereas he doesn't have a son. General Gyozen is very milquetoast and bland if you don't include the son in the equation from a universe lore and character dynamic perspective. That's about all I have to say, but before I kind of wrap up the video and give my closing thoughts in general, General Gyozen's military rank doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Captain Douglas Gordon in Godzilla Final Wars is a captain, which makes some kind of sense because the Atragon and the Gotengo in that case are kind of treated as maritime ships, of course warships, and they obviously don't exist in the water, they fly.
Oh, they fly now!
They fly now? They fly now!
But you probably see what I mean. If they were put under a United States military classification, they would be naval vessels.
Nuclear vessels. Nuclear vessels.
So the fact that he is a general and not a captain, much like Captain Gordon, or perhaps an admiral, is strange. Much like Kenji Miku, though, I'm willing to suspend my disbelief because considering the overall quality of the story mode of Godzilla Unleashed, I would imagine that not a whole lot of thought and time went into naming the characters in that story.
Step 2. naming the character.
I know that's probably a silly thing to talk about, but as I did with many of the characters from the IDW Kingdom of Monsters comic, I felt like because there's so little out on the internet that I know of discussing the human character cast of Godzilla Unleashed, it deserved a dedicated video from yours truly. Because if no one else is going to do it, and if no one else has done it thus far, who's going to do it? Nobody. Nobody is going to do it. Follow the road sign advice, please. I would very much appreciate it. I have recorded 3 separate videos today instead of doing something important like my laundry. So please vindicate my poor decision to cover Godzilla stuff in specific instead of doing any of that. I know the banner's gone, but check out the merch. This one in particular is based on a Shedding Tears episode that I did a long while ago. No one's gonna stick around to watch the video that long anyway, so whatever. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed and took it easy while you watched the video, and until next time, guys, I will catch you on the flip side. Godzilla Brawler out!
Request them to draw your fan character because you're talentless. Lazy.